Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you all have had your lunch, enjoyed your lunch, or maybe having some right now. Welcome to our webinar where we're going to talk about some of the 5 best basic practices that every business must follow in 2021, and surprisingly enough, most aren't. Presenters today are going to be myself, Dave Modzaleski. I'm a director at Whittlesey, and Jeff Kappa, who you see on screen with me, who is a senior cybersecurity analyst. And Jeff and I have both been with Whittlesey for a while now. We've got a lot of experience working with small and medium businesses in a technical advisory role. I myself have 17 years in the tech field, and I've spent a lot of them here, over a dozen at Whittlesey, working directly with small and medium businesses as a technical advisor and helping them implement solutions. And I'll let Jeff kind of give a little bit of his background.
How you doing? So as Dave said, I'm the senior cybersecurity analyst with Whittlesey. Obviously expertise in cybersecurity. I do have my Security Plus cert, along with a certification in forensic examination, among some others. 13 years altogether in the technology field. Mainly at Whittlesey, I focus on cybersecurity assessments for clients and non-clients, and also security awareness programs, along with forensics are the 3 main topics I do work on.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. So, just to give a summary of today's agenda, really the goal of this presentation is to kind of cover some of the really easy to access best practices in IT that all businesses can attain. They're within budget. And regardless of if your user count is 2 or 200, these are some of the basics that businesses should really be doing in 2021. And, I'm always surprised how many times we go in and do an assessment and find that a lot of these kind of basic problems and strategies are not being implemented. And really, with the types of breaches and security instances we see, a lot of these would prevent quite a few of those and save a lot of companies a lot of headache and stress and money as well. So we're going to be covering some of the big benefits that you get in the low cost of cybersecurity training programs, preventing business email compromise with 2-factor authentication and email encryption, protecting your network with some low-cost network security add-ons, backing up your data and keeping it safe from ransomware and other disasters, and then management of passwords and some of the new guidance from NIST. And it's always fun to kind of keep these a little bit interactive. So if you guys have questions, feel free to use the Q&A feature. We'll try to address those live as we see them come in. Makes for a little bit more of an interesting discussion, so feel free to chime in if you need some clarification or have any thoughts or questions that you want answered. So with that, I'll pass it over to Jeff, who's going to touch on cybersecurity training programs and why they're important.
Thanks, Dave. So yeah, I'll be working on 3 topics today. The first one being security awareness. Most of you probably have a general idea of what security awareness is. But just to go over the exact definition of what it's used for with security awareness training, it's a form of education to equip the workforce, your employees, with the information they need to not just protect themselves, but to protect your organization, your assets, from a variety of different threats that are out there today that basically change almost on a daily basis on the type of attack vectors being used. The purpose for this discussion, it does mean all employees, any temps, interns you may have, contractors, basically anyone that has access to your office or to your location or to your systems, not just virtually, but also physically, matters as well nowadays. Topics covered in security awareness training often expand beyond the digital world, as I just said, and physical security is becoming almost, if not just as important nowadays to keep an organization secure. Dave, you can head to the next one. So why do I need security awareness? So in the past, it's been thought that security awareness is something you could probably do on an annual basis or nothing at all. You can maybe give your employees something when they're first hired, a little information on security awareness, on phishing, basically, what to not click on, or what it might look like to see a phishing example. It's not that way anymore because of attacks increasing so much, especially in the last year, and the fact that, we are connected nowadays 24/7. Everyone's on their phones 24/7. You leave the office, you're still technically connected to work. You're always working. So it's good to always be secure no matter where you are. It's not just a 9 to 5 security concern anymore. It's 24/7, 365. Contrary to what people believe, employees are the weakest link in a security chain of an organization. You can have the $20,000 business grade firewall. You can have all these different pieces in place from network standpoints for security and alert systems, but if employees are not trained up, then they can cause a breach at your company. It's just one of the main things we see, especially in my field. One of the main things I work on is breach cases, and it's almost always starts with an employee making a mistake. Maybe not just clicking on a phishing link. There are other ways too, but it almost always starts with an employee making a mistake, either on purpose or mostly by accident. Like I said before, always being connected is another reason you need security awareness nowadays. And it's not just recognizing the phish anymore. While phishing is still the most popular, one of the most popular ways of getting into a network or getting into a company, it's not the only one anymore. Attackers are now realizing that two-factor authentication is becoming more prominent nowadays. And since it is, they are trying to look for different ways into a company that are becoming increasingly, more successful. It do include other types of phishes. You could call them vishing, which is phone phishing, or smishing, which is the text phishing. Everyone gets those nowadays, where the most common one is, you got a UPS delivery coming, click here to track. Those are scams that work pretty well nowadays because everyone is always getting deliveries from Prime and whatnot. So those are pretty successful, more successful than you might think. But it's not just about, those types of social engineering attacks anymore. It's also about internet safety, going to sites, users downloading things they should not be, and just, making mistakes or leaking data by accident, even on social media sometimes. So it's not just about phishing anymore like it has been in the past. Another piece is compliance. More and more nowadays, compliance laws and HIPAA and other types of, laws out there are putting security awareness programs into their compliance nowadays, so that you have to be doing something for security awareness. Now, yeah, you can do the bare minimum and still probably pass some of these compliance laws, but at the same time, if you do that, your users aren't learning anything, and it kind of defeats the purpose, and it doesn't strengthen your defense, which is the main reason of security awareness, is to strengthen your employees. Continually changing environments and attack vectors, like I spoke on, with 2FA becoming more prominent. They are looking for different ways in the systems, doing more manual attacks and automated attacks nowadays. Criminal hacking, I guess you could call it. And with the resources out there for hackers nowadays that anyone can get, open source wise, hackers can be very green, is the word they would use, not be actual good hackers, and just basically piggyback off of really good hackers' tools and use that to get in your network. So, kids nowadays are getting more and more into that. The younger generations are, more into cybersecurity and hacking, and focusing on those types of things are some of the things we've noticed in the past few years. Small mistakes can equal big consequences. Breaches are very expensive, and I'll get into that later. It could cost you a lot of money, especially ransomware too is another big thing nowadays that costs some companies a lot of money if they don't have great backup systems, or if they don't catch it in time. So, one little mistake, one little link click can cause, a disaster for your company, with downtime and financials and just an array of different issues. And finally, security is everyone's responsibility. In the past, it's been thought that IT is, they're the ones that deal with the security, or the security department, they'll deal with it. It's like I said, it's not that way anymore. It's every employee's job, top to bottom, to worry about security, just because of the amount of attacks out there and the amount of them that are successful.
Yeah, lots of good reasons. I mean, for the cost too. I mean, it provides such a tangible benefit.
Yeah, and as Dave said, and I will talk about our program a little bit, but the cost benefit of doing a program and, lowering your overall risk, besides, getting hit with one breach, because there is, in my opinion, two types of companies out there. There's ones that have been hacked, and there are ones that are going to be hacked. It's not, it might not happen tomorrow. It might be 10 years from now, but it's basically inevitable at this point that, a company will be hacked, and all you can really do, nothing is 100%, but is make sure you are as secure as possible and your employees are as informed as possible. So you will see a poll question coming out shortly about security awareness. And here, I just wanted to throw some stats out here. 95%, as I said, 95% of breaches are due to human error. There's an attack every 39 seconds just in the United States at a company, or a spray attack that hits multiple companies at once. 43% of employees are not aware that clicking a suspicious link or opening an attachment can cause damage. They just think it's usually spam trying to get them to buy something or something along those lines. So they don't actually realize that that it can cause serious harm to your company, and they might not even report it, which is another thing we see a lot, and why breaches happen, because no one even knows what's going on until it's too late. 43% of cyber attacks target small and medium-sized businesses. That's increasing, every year. I think in the past year it was around 30%. So cyber attackers are starting to realize that these, big-time companies and Fortune 500 companies have security departments working around the clock 24/7, whereas small to medium-sized businesses might not even have a security department, or just a one-person IT department, and realize those are, if I can hit 10 small companies easily, why not just do that instead of going after that one big fish, which will be very hard to get through their security and their constant alert systems and notifications they have going out, which you really don't see in small to medium-sized businesses. Since COVID started, phishing attacks have gone up 667%, which is an astonishing amount. What attackers are realizing since COVID happened was that emotional attacks are the way to go. Emotional attacks garner clicks, because when people get emotional, they tend to react quicker and don't think. So when they do attacks that play on someone's emotions, it will, it's garnered more clicks. So they are focusing more on emotional attacks, which is, COVID, what's going on in the news today, current events, things along those woods. Tiger Woods yesterday, someone might send out emails about that, and that will cause a decent amount of clicks, as people would want to read it and realize, not realize that it's actually a phishing attack. So it looks, looking at the results, 53% do have a security awareness program. That's a little higher than usual on these webinars, which is great. So it's great to see that. About 42% are showing that they do not, and one does not know. So a little better than I've usually seen, which is great. But again, it's something that even if you're a one-person shop, you need security awareness nowadays, and it's just part of the world today. So, and I'm going to focus on what goes into a good security awareness program coming up after this slide. But a few more stats for you are that 25% of employees believe it's acceptable to use personal cloud storage options for company files. That causes issues that I work on all the time too, is that, people get breached on their personal, their personal storage or their personal accounts, and they have PII or PHI or all, confidential files saved up there for their company that they, shouldn't be allowed to do. And with a security awareness program, they would be shown not to do that. 33% of employees believe there's no need for a password or passcode on a laptop or mobile devices. And I mean, we all know if you get a hold of someone's laptop or their mobile device, especially, it's basically the keys to the castle. I mean, everyone keeps everything on their laptop, connected to cloud storages or locally, and for their mobile devices, that's, very big for their personal lives and their work lives, with email connected and any different types of cloud storage apps connected. So, not knowing that is a very basic thing that everyone needs to know, is that passwords and passcodes basically have to be on everything nowadays. On average, companies take 6 months to detect a data breach. And that was what I was talking about before with incident reporting. If something happens and you don't have the right systems in place to alert you, these hackers can be in your systems for months trying to figure out a way to, get more information, sell more data, increase their attacks, maybe break your backup so that they can deploy ransomware and you have no way of recovering from it. So, the longer it takes to detect a breach, the less chance you have of coming out of it, unscathed as far as money or, downtime. Data breach investigation. So every year Verizon releases a report of data breach investigations, just information based on industry standards and what industry is getting hit by what type of attack. And, these are some of the overall stats here of how companies are getting hit. And as you can see, the number one is criminal hacking. So it may start with a phishing attack, which is automated, but after that, they're becoming more manual, these attackers nowadays, and actually doing legitimate criminal hacking where they're running scripts, or they're actually in the system working on it, instead of it being something automated like a computer or a bot, it's called, furthering the attacks. The number two is human error, not including attacks from successful phishes. humans make mistakes on the internet all the time. They go to, insecure sites. They don't know how to browse properly in certain ways, and can even be physical as well, which is number 6. So physical actions taken by mistakes by human error physically can also letting someone into the building that shouldn't be there, or letting someone into a confidential area that shouldn't be there. Social engineering is number 3. Malware is number 4. Unauthorized use being number 5. And then, as I said before, 6 is physical actions. Malware is something that you may download a program and not realize it's installing something else, and it may disguise itself as a program, but it's actually downloading something harmful to your computer. Unauthorized use is just someone using their computer not what it's supposed to be used for. So a lot of days work and personal life are combined, and people are using their work computer for personal. Log into their banking, log into something like that, and that unauthorized use leads to attacks because they're going to sites that maybe they shouldn't be, that they would normally just view, on their personal computer. So that's causing more issues, especially now that, most companies have transferred to a more work from home atmosphere. No one's going to have 2 computers at their desk. So you want to make sure they know what they should and should not be doing on their work computers, and what's, what guidelines they should be following. So the right way. Now we're getting into exactly what a security awareness program is and does. So, the only way to do it nowadays is to hire experienced professionals. In the past, you might have HR take care of it, or be done part-time on someone's job, but it's just, again, it's become too prominent nowadays with how successful attacks are being to not leave it up to their professionals to do their job and make sure they're targeting your company's weaknesses and, taking care of everything for you, especially with examples such as new hires. New hires are a huge threat to any company because you don't know what kind of intelligence as far as cybersecurity they're bringing to your company. So you want to make sure they're trained up and understand everything. And you want to make sure that it's constantly being looked at, and you're being given statistics on who's failing phishing tests, who's not completing their training, who really is not taking it seriously. And that's why you need professionals nowadays, is just for those reasons. And it makes your lives easier so you don't have to worry about it. Developing employees. A lot of people think that, okay, we need security awareness. Let me just shout out, we'll do the same annual training each year, and that'll be enough to comply, and that'll be enough for employees. And we've found that it's not. We've been doing more targeted approaches to our clients for security awareness, and it's really helping employees understand. You want to develop them. You want to make sure they understand all aspects of security awareness, not just the overall, basic summary that comes out with those overall trainings that may go out once a year. So you want to develop your employees so that they're stronger, just like you would in their job role. The same way it goes for, security awareness. You want to identify and prioritize your weaknesses. Every company I've done security awareness on is different. They all have different issues. They have different strengths, and they have different weaknesses. So you want to make sure that whoever's running your security awareness program knows these weaknesses and then uses the training to target those weaknesses. So and that's something we take very seriously, is every one of our clients has a individualized approach based on what weaknesses, after giving out some assessments and some tests, where their employees, what don't they understand, and what do they need to understand based on their industry or where they work. So that's one of the biggest ones really for a security awareness program, is identifying, prioritizing. Data loss prevention is another huge part of security awareness. You might not think it's security awareness, but it is. You employees need to understand about data loss prevention and where to save their files securely, and not to share with personal storage space, and not to just get mixed up with the personal / business life. So data loss prevention is huge, because it might not be someone going into your system, but if someone gets access to confidential or PII files, that can cause issues down the road, or company secrets and things along those lines. Role-based security awareness. So, this is another important piece we focus on, is that, the CEO has different worries than someone that is works in the manufacturing plant as far as security awareness. So, you want to focus the awareness based on their job role. There's different things every department and every employee would have to worry about. So as you get into a more, enhanced advanced program of security awareness, you want to make sure which departments, that have certain worries should be focusing on those worries. It's not just an all-in-one where you send out the same exact training to everyone. As you get, further down in your security awareness program, it gets broken off, and different employees will get different training based on what their job is and what their strengths and weaknesses are. As you can see in the title, this one is one of my biggest points is that training. Training is really the only way for employees to understand security awareness. It works just like anything else, repetition, training, and then some more training. The more reps they do, the better chance they have of understanding it. Now, the thing about training is it can become very stale, and that's one thing you don't want. Is you want to make sure it's different every quarter. We focus quarterly, and we don't think semi-annually is enough anymore, and it's really not. Quarterly is really the way to go, and we're not talking about 2 to 3 hours a quarter. We're talking about 30 minutes a quarter, basically, is what we're looking at for training. Maybe one that's a little larger at an hour and a half, but mainly 30 minutes a quarter. It's very important that it's fresh, that it's different modules. Sometimes I include games. I include even sometimes I just include informational modules that they need to know about what's going on in cybersecurity today that they need to understand. So training for every employee quarterly, new hire training, remedial training for employees that fail phishing tests or fail other things, role-based training as we just talked about, and then compliance training. A lot of employees and even companies don't even know what they're supposed to comply with. So having the ability to train them on those compliances is just great, and it gives employees an insight into what they have to be doing, and companies what they have to be doing to comply with any laws or guidances they're supposed to be in compliance with. So the keys to success for a great security awareness program is it has to start at the top. Leadership has to buy into it. It's that's basically like anything else you try to do at your company as well. If leadership doesn't buy in, employees won't buy in. I've worked at some clients that the CEOs, I don't have to do this. It's for my employees. When the CEO is the one that's clicked on 17 phishing emails and caused some issues. So it has to start at the top. And everyone has to be doing it and taking it the same amount. Everyone has to be taking it seriously. So, we have found that if leadership buys in and, they back us when we send out the training, and they urge their employees that they have to do it, and they know that people are not watching it, it gets taken more seriously altogether by everyone. Compliance is very important to any organization, no matter the industry. Always updating and always improving, as I talked about, changing it up, different things every single quarter, making sure it's not stale. Even with the phishing campaigns we will send out to try to, test employees on phishes, making sure they see different ones every time so they can, be tested on all the different phishing categories out there. What might be good, what are the most common type of phishes today? Being able to measure is another important piece. Being able to measure that you're getting better. So, that's one thing we do here too, as well as we send out these assessments at the beginning of a year, possibly, and we'll take those scores and then focus training on what, the weaknesses were based on those scores. And at the end of the year, we send out that same exact assessment, and we see all the scores, and we see all the scores individually and as a whole go up. So that's what you want to see with your company. The main reason for doing security awareness is to make sure your employees are getting something out of it, that you're not just paying to say you're complying with something. You want to see their scores increase, and that's where the measurability comes in. Be relevant. Training can get stale really quick, especially in cybersecurity. Anyone, what might be relevant yesterday might not be relevant today, because cybersecurity is ever changing. Some clients include incentives for people that do very good on training, or for report the phishing attempts we send out, and again, variety, very important to security awareness, variety, and keeping everyone on their toes as far as training goes. And I know I had to speed up a little bit here. Sorry, Dave. So Whittlesey's Advanced Security Awareness Program for clients. Again, when I talk about security awareness, a lot of these smaller clients think, oh my God, I don't want to pay thousands of dollars each year for security awareness, and it really is not that. Especially if you're a smaller client, they're very low budget. We do use KnowBe4. And you will see a poll coming in as well. We do use KnowBe4 is one of our main tools for security awareness. It's a great program. It's got a lot of training modules, a lot of games, informational handouts that we use for our clients. And honestly, for us to manage you, it only really takes 2 to 3 billable hours per quarter on average for most of our small to medium-sized businesses we work with. And the smaller clients, like a 1 to 5 outfit, could be even less. It could be 1 hour a quarter or 2 hours every other quarter. So it's not as much budget as you think. And our main goal is to keep you informed with that budget. So we focus, we give you as much information as possible. Who are your riskiest employees, who's struggling, who always clicks on phishes. And that's one of the main things that comes out of the billable hours, is that you get a lot of statistics and reports on how your company is doing as far as security awareness. As I said before, we do training for quarterly, new hire, remedial, and then additional for people that may do something wrong. The other day, a client had someone that sent out PII over the email. So that individual person got additional training based on how to protect PII. Proficiency assessments, games. Games have become very big for me. A little 5-10 minute games instead of reading or watching a video for 10 minutes and doing a test. I think they work better sometimes. People like playing games, and it makes it more interactive. So they may be more focused on a game than a training module. Weekly to bi-weekly phishing campaigns. Target weaknesses of each individual client. Focus on industry weaknesses. Again, that's what we talked about. Your industry's weaknesses and then your company's weaknesses. Advanced reporting, all those types of scores and stats right there is what you'd be getting out of it. Compliance training. We're starting to send out cybersecurity newsletters and handouts to stay up to date on, security threats and what's going on in security news today. Nothing lengthy, not like a big, a huge document, just a one-page newsletter of, any of attacks that have come out, making sure they didn't affect you, like the SolarWinds attack, Sunburst attack that happened in December, things like that. Some companies also do USB drive tests where they litter their offices with USB drives and they see who's going to plug them in. And then again, smishing and vishing or phishing as well are some things that we're starting to do more of, test the different capabilities of social engineering, not just phishing, as those ones are becoming more prominent. So as I can see from the stats, it looks like it's pretty evened out except for the non-applicable. Annually, semi-annually, and quarterly. That's great for you guys doing annually, amazing. Semi-annually, very good start. Or excuse me, quarterly, great. Annually, it's a good start. And semi-annually, you're right in the middle there. So quarterly, just a great job. And semi-annually and annually, you guys are doing something that's more than most companies, so that's great. I would just suggest doing it quarterly and then doing it more, less length, but more quarterly training instead of doing it semi-annually or annually. And again, at the bottom there, security awareness is no longer a part-time job, which is hopefully something you're getting out of this.
Absolutely. All right. So I think we're on our next topic here.
So preventing a business email compromise with two-factor authentication and email encryption. I believe we have an example on the next page there you go. The example that Dave will talk about
so
next.
I'll jump in and explain this. This actually came from a real world experience working with the company. And it just kind of is a good way to start the conversation because it illustrates some of the really interesting target attacks that are out there. So this actually came from, if you see the top message there, from Joseph, a LinkedIn profile. So this is actually a compromised LinkedIn account of a real person who got their password exposed in a data breach. And he reached out to Ron, the vice president of sales, to initiate a conversation about wanting to do some business with the company, so on and so forth. They chatted on LinkedIn quickly and then moved the conversation over to their email accounts. And you see kind of the next message down there. That's when Joseph makes his move to try to steal Ron's credentials. He said, I got your email. I'm interested in doing business. Take a look. You see that link down there. He wants him to look at some documents. So he sends a link to a document transfer portal. And Ron clicks that link, and what does he go to do? He tries to log in with his business email and password. Obviously, it doesn't work because there's no document. It's just designed to steal his password. It just errors out, and he's like, weird. He sends that message down at the bottom. Oh, yeah, it didn't work. Could you send it some other way? And then, Joseph, fake Joseph, the malicious actor, says, oh, sorry about that. I'll have my personal assistant send it over to you via PDF. And obviously we never hear from Joseph again because he's just an attacker and he has what he wants, which is Ron's credentials. And then he sat on Ron's account for another 2 months until it became apparent that Ron was negotiating the details of a wire transfer with a vendor. And at the right moment, the attacker kind of jumped into the middle of the conversation, gave Ron's company, said, hey, use this account instead to wire the money to, instead of, the vendor's account. And then, the company wired, 60 some odd $1,000 to the attacker, all from this business email compromise. And, the attacker's main goal was just to kind of sit on the account, look for valuable information and wait for the right moment to strike. And that's the type of thing that could have or would have been prevented with two-factor authentication, probably security awareness training as well, because Ron would have been smart enough to realize, wait a minute, this looks a little suspicious.
All right, so two-factor authentication. We really want to drill this into here. So if you remember one thing from this presentation, this is it. You know, two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication. It requires an additional piece of information beyond username and password. So when they stole those credentials from Ron, if they went to go use them, you know, Ron would have gotten some kind of ping probably on his mobile device saying, hey, are you trying to log into this right now? Or, you know, or it may ask them for a passcode that they wouldn't have because only Ron would have that information on his device. And I'll go into the types of two-factor authentication next, but it's critically important to enable it on all email accounts. Email is usually the first place that they're going to try that username and password and see if it works before moving on to, you know, cloud storage or remote access or other sites. And it does not require a prompt every time you open your email application. That's the one thing that turns people off to 2FA is they think, oh my God, every time I open Outlook now, I got to log in with my username and password and then put in this code or approve it on my device. No, it's mainly for web browsing and, you know, public devices. So if you're on your computer and you have you configure your Outlook, that first time it will prompt you for that second factor after you're putting in your credentials. But after that, you know, that's your personal device. It'll be cached in there. Maybe forever. Some companies do annually, some may do less, but you know, it's not an everyday thing like most people believe. So types of two-factor authentication, and poll coming out as well if you have two-factor authentication. So do you have two-factor authentication basically on your email or remote access for work? So if you look at the first picture there of the iPhone, and that's probably one of the most secure ways, is that when you try to log into your account, you'll get a alert right on your phone saying, is this you? It's coming from this location. It's trying to log into this at this date and time. Is it you or not? Approve or deny. Very easy to understand. And if it's not you, if you're not trying to log into anything, you have some background information on where it's happening and where it's going, and you know where you're. That means they were able to successfully put in your password. So where your password is compromised. The next one is, which is probably the most common, is that you try to log into your website or wherever you have the two-factor enabled, and it'll shoot you a 6-digit passcode, and you put that passcode in. It's a one-time passcode, so it changes every single time you log in, but that's probably the biggest way. It comes to you via text. A lot of personal mailboxes like Google, Yahoo do that, and then there's, you know, a lot of different sites. Apple as well as another one. And you again, you type in the code and you go from there. So looks like 10 of you do say you have two-factor. Great job. 7 with no, and 1 I don't know. Again, this is probably the one thing we want to drill into. Two-factor should be on basically everything nowadays. And I'll go into that again next. The last one you see there is an authenticator app, and that's very common as well. Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator are the two biggest. If you go to log into your, your email, it'll say, hey, what's the code? You open up the app on your iPhone or Droid, and you type in the code that, you know, it dials out every 30 seconds and gets a new code. So it's ever changing, which is great. And, you know, you just type that in and you're able to log in. And again, unless someone has your personal device or, you know, very advanced attack called SIM swapping, it's very, very hard to bypass these types of two-factor authentication we're showing you here.
And for you 7 or 8 people that don't have two-factor turned on, right after this presentation, go turn it on. That's the next thing you should do.
Yep. And again, the breaches I all see, there's no 2FA enabled on the account that was breached is generally the first step. That's how they get in. So why do I need 2FA? An attacker cannot get into the system without that second authentication. So your password is stolen, even if it was stolen on, you know, another site, and they tried it on your site, they tried it on your email, but it was stolen from another web browser site that you use the same password, they still wouldn't be able to get in because they don't have that second authentication. So it automatically will block them. Small and medium-sized businesses targeted more each year, and that's just going to keep growing. If your password is stolen, like I said, they would have to be able to have that second factor to get in. So they'll need that approval authentication method or that authenticator app. It's more than likely you already hacked one way or another. Data breaches, like I said, they happen every day. Just because they don't happen at your work doesn't mean you're not breached. A single compromised user password will be tested by the attacker in all different types of ways. So if your Google account gets hacked, they'll take that Google email address and password and they'll try it everywhere else using a script, you know, and you think that would take a lot of time, and it takes, you know, milliseconds. They'll just put it into a script and it'll tell it all the sites and all the different places that login worked for. And then all of a sudden you're breached on 10 different logins than just Google. There's a website out there called haveibeenpwned.com. You just type in your email address and it'll let you know, in the past, I think 15 years, what breaches your email address has been a part of. So it'll also let you know what was taken in that breach. Was it a username and password, or was it financial information, or was it my address and phone number? So it'll let you know all that types of information. And it's free. We set it up on our clients as well now too. So we get an alert every time someone's part of a breach, because a lot of them don't make the news. Only the big ones make the news. So when smaller companies get hit, they just report it. No one talks about it and it gets put on this site. Data breaches are very expensive. Forensic investigations, which is one of the main things I do, takes a lot of time and money. Privacy attorney hiring, if any PII, PHI, confidential information was stolen, and then free credit reporting if someone was affected, if there's an affected party in there, if someone's social security number was taken. So on average, it takes 45 days to resolve the breach from the incident response to the end of the forensics and passed over to the privacy attorney, and costs companies $35,000, per day. And that's for bigger companies. Smaller companies, it's probably less per day, but it's still going to be in the low thousands per day usually, depending on the size of the breach. So very expensive. So 2FA and security awareness, two big steps to never have to deal with that. So where should I enable that 2FA? The short answer from me is everywhere, personal and business-wise. Just enable it on anywhere you can. 95% of places you have a login have some type of two-factor authentication that you can enable. It won't be enabled automatically. You have to go into the settings and turn it on. But almost everyone does it nowadays because everyone's trying to, attackers are always trying to hack every second. And today, email, remote network access, banking are probably three of the biggest. Web browser logins, where you also should not be saving your passwords or your credit card data, no matter how easy it is. Do not do that. Cloud-based storage apps, Dropbox, Google, iCloud, two-factor authentication on all those, even loans, bills, social media, Amazon Prime, and again, the list goes on and on. Because like I said, they get a hold of one password, they'll try it everywhere else. And if what a lot of people do is use the same password or variances of that password, and will end up getting breached, and their social media is hacked, and they're sending out stuff to people and they don't even know it. My last topic is email encryption. So email encryption is the encryption of email messages to protect the content from being read by entities other than the intended recipient. So someone's getting an email, they're not supposed to get it, and they read it. With encryption on it, they won't be able to read it. Most standard email providers only encrypt email in transit, so when it goes to the person you're sending it to. But once it gets to their inbox and then in your sent items, it's not encrypted. So if an attacker gets access to one of your mailboxes, then they have access to that information from compromise, and again, with compromised logins or attackers. Breach laws and forensics. If you have encryption, it could really save you money on forensics, and it could also be a safe haven on a breach law, where if something happens and the breach law states that if you have encryption, it's not considered a full breach. It saves you a lot of money and time. So encryption is very important. And there's different types of encryption out there. First being manual encryption. A lot of companies do this where they tell their employees, like, if you need something encrypted, if there's sensitive information, all you got to do is put the word secure or encrypt or 5 exclamation points in the email, and it'll automatically encrypt it for you and send it through our system encrypted. But again, that's only, that might only be in transit, and it will not encrypt once it's at that user's inbox, or it won't be encrypted in your sent items and only be encrypted in the employee's inbox that's getting the email. Automatic encryption on the back end, security departments or IT departments will set up mail rules looking for certain algorithms, certain types of, information to say that if an email tries to go out and it thinks it has PII in it or PHI in it, it'll kick it back to the employee that tried sending it and say, hey, you have to encrypt this email, or it'll take the job on and actually encrypt the email without the person knowing and send it off encrypted just by looking at certain, variables inside the email. The best way, in my opinion, is third-party encryption via email notification is the best way. That means that you are sending someone a file, you might upload it through a third-party app that I'll go over next, and then all the person gets in their inbox is a notification saying, hey, someone is trying to share a secure file with you, click here. So encrypted file sharing. most secure way if done correctly. It can be used for all the things listed there, confidential files, PII, PHI, and so on. So what happens is, like I said, the user that's getting the email will just get an alert on their inbox saying, hey, you have to sign in, you have to click here and then sign in order to access the information. It might limit the ability, so they can't even download the information if they're not supposed to, or edit it. They could just view it. And that's the safest way. That means if someone's mailbox is breached, that PII or that confidential information isn't in the mailbox. It's in a third-party website that they have to go log into, so there's no breach there. Alerts and notifications are the best way to go instead of actually sending the data over email. And again, there'll be no copy of email in the inbox or the sent items for that fact. So both mailboxes will be secure from PII or confidential, whatever may be in there. So you'll be safer from a breach if it happens.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff, for covering all those things. Definitely topics 1 through 3, super easy ways, low cost to significantly and tangibly reduce the risk or expense of a security incident. We have a question here from Peter. Wants a copy of the PowerPoint and meeting recording. I don't know about the meeting recording, but I can send a PDF of the PowerPoint. Our contact information will be on the last slide, so feel free to just take that down. If you do want a copy of the PowerPoint after the fact, we can send it off to you. So I'll start covering the next couple topics here. Oh, looks like we got another question from Melissa. How do you enable 2FA on the iPhone email app? So where you end up enabling two-factor is with the actual email provider. So if that's like Gmail or Office 365 or the other actual host of the email, you turn it on the account there, and then you would configure your phone. Usually, the app on the iPhone kind of ties in with a two-factor provided by the provider and allows you to authenticate, it'll send you that little prompt up on the screen, hey, put in your second factor now, where you then go get your text message or the 6-digit code from the app that you've set up. All right, so the next couple topics I'll cover is the first one's going to be protecting your network. So this is slightly more technical, but I'm going to keep it relatively high level with some low-cost network security add-ons. Again, this all comes from experience, out in the field, seeing small and medium businesses and what is actually happening. So the first one is firewalls. What is a firewall? Everybody's kind of heard the term at this point. It's just a piece of hardware that sits between your network and the public internet. It mediates the traffic going out and coming in. So, when people are doing a Zoom meeting or browsing to a website or connecting to another service that's based on the internet, all that's got to travel through the firewall. And it allows and blocks traffic based on rules and pattern matching. And typically, you could consider at a broad level, there's two types of firewalls. There's the consumer grade, which you might recognize, anything you could kind of pick up at Best Buy, typically. Stuff that you'd see in your home. The Comcast modem has a consumer grade firewall built in. And then some examples of a business grade firewall that, stuff that we would want to see at a client is, over on the right. Higher end names like SonicWall, Cisco, Juniper, that type of thing. Usually the devices come with like a metal chassis, a lot of times rack mountable. So even just a quick visual inspection can kind of tell you, what you might have in your business. And why would that be important? There's a few different reasons. I think kind of mainly centered around 3 reasons. The main one, I'll start with the second bullet point there, is the ongoing software and firmware updates. You get that $60, $70, $100 consumer device at Best Buy or order from Amazon more commonly nowadays. You're going to get that, and that maybe Linksys will release software updates for it for the next year. But they're not going to do nearly as good of a job as an actual business firewall vendor, network equipment vendor, of maintaining that device over its expected functional lifespan of 5 to 7 years. These devices, they're not unlike computers and digital video recorder systems that occasionally hackers find vulnerabilities in them, and they need to be patched. Just like you would patch all your Windows workstations and your servers on a regular basis, you have to patch your firewalls too, because they have the same types of issues, though not as frequent as, say, like a Windows desktop. And you need a vendor that actually supports the firewall and releases those software updates on a regular basis. That's probably one of the most significant reasons there are a ton of consumer grade devices out there that have security vulnerabilities that are just never going to be patched. You know, the vendor releases them, they're commodity devices, they're making very little profit. They don't have the time or the money or the incentive to sink research dollars and development dollars back into supporting those devices in the long term. But you will get that with a business grade device. They've got more powerful hardware to support add-on features that provide additional security filtering for the network. You know, some of these features are pretty powerful in helping police the type of traffic that comes and goes out of the network. You know, commonly they're referred to as a group, unified threat management. You know, you may hear that term when talking about a firewall. That just means the firewall has a suite of services that can be turned on to filter the traffic that's going through it. So this is commonly things like web content filtering, geographic filtering, so preventing computers from connecting to servers and websites in other countries, antivirus and anti-spyware filtering. So looking at files as users download them and kind of doing an AV check before it even hits the computer. Botnet filtering. So if a computer does happen to get infected, it can prevent that malicious software from reaching back to its command and control servers and executing whatever its payload is. And then intrusion detection and prevention. So that's, you know, pattern matching for kind of known malicious traffic. You know, say if you have a server or a VPN system at your business with a known issue, a lot of times intrusion prevention filtering on a firewall can help kind of stop that traffic before it's able to take advantage of the vulnerability. And then single sign-on remote access options. So if you need to have remote access for employees to a network, which is pretty common nowadays, tying that into a single sign-on so the users can have one identity that kind of matches their computer sign-on, works with two-factor authentication, you know, makes that experience a lot easier and a lot more secure for the people that have to use VPN. So I'll launch the next polling question. It's do you have a video surveillance system that you can view while you're not in the office? The reason I ask this is because this is a common security issue with firewalls, just open ports for remote access without any type of control. So that's a big issue. You know, anytime you allow traffic in through the firewall to see something inside the network, you know, there's definitely a risk. And the reason I say DVRs is because it's super common for those to be set up by the DVR vendor. You know, it's just a little Windows or Linux PC. They put it out there and then it runs for the next 13 years and nobody ever touches the thing. And it's got tons of security vulnerabilities that just aren't getting patched. So that's a big one that I see all the time. Remote management that's wide open to the internet. So again, a lot of people will configure remote management on firewalls to allow them to just easily get into the thing and do configuration without having to be on site. Definitely should not be open to the wider internet. That's going to open it up to any potential attacker that wants to start guessing usernames and passwords. Remote desktop protocol, exposed directly to the internet. That's another big one, especially nowadays as companies have gone remote. People have started opening up remote desktop servers more frequently without any additional protection like two-factor or locking them down in any way. That's another big one. And then the default password not changed on the device. That's like so simple, but you see it surprisingly frequently. You know, all these things, again, don't take much to address and lock them down. You know, putting a DVR behind a VPN service, turning off remote management on the firewall or locking it down. They're all 5 or 10 minute changes in the configuration of a firewall. And if you have a proper business firewall, not hard at all to do. So we'll close that poll, look at the results here. So about half, a little more than half or so, do have a DVR system open that they can view while they're not in the office. So something to consider when you know, as you're kind of doing your security planning, if you don't have to turn on a VPN before you look at that DVR, that's definitely kind of a red flag that you want to think about, talk about with your IT or the person that set it up. Hey, you know, we should lock this down in some way, whether it's putting it behind a VPN or kind of filtering the traffic before we can get to it. So I'll kind of go on to my next thing here. and kind of keep it fast because I know we're getting towards the end of our time. This is another great one that you can do for free, and it adds a nice layer of security to any network. DNS security filtering, super easy to do. You can configure it for an entire network in the span of 15 minutes. So what is DNS? It stands for domain name system. It's the way that computers locate websites on the internet. Your computer needs DNS servers to tell it how to find websites. So here's a little example of a computer making a DNS request. It says, hey, computer says to the DNS server, where iswadvising.com? That's our website, actually. The DNS server responds with the IP address. That's kind of the address of how a computer knows where to go on the network. And then the computer responds, oh, okay, I will go to that address. And when it does, you see at the end, it says, hey, web server, I'm here. And the web server then sends the web page back to the computer. So that's just how computers find websites on the internet. Whenever you're typing in a web address behind the scenes, that's exactly what's happening. All right, what is DNS security filtering? So the DNS server with security filtering has a known list of malicious sites. And instead of telling your computer how to find malicious sites, when it sees, oh, for some reason your computer's trying to get to a malicious site, it just tells your computer that it doesn't exist. So your computer says, hey, where's that malicious site I want to go to? The DNS server says, sorry, that's not a thing that exists. You can't get there, and your computer doesn't get there. So it can prevent people from going to malicious sites, or it can prevent malicious software from activating its payload. So a lot of times ransomware or other software needs to phone home before it does anything. And DNS security filtering can block that type of thing. Data backup. This one, it feels obvious, and we IT professionals and everyone's been saying, you got to back up your data for, I don't know, 2 decades, more than that at this point. It feels like, oh yeah, everybody's backing up their data, right? Wrong. It's always amazing how often we see, people have set up some kind of weird backup system that isn't functioning correctly, or they set it up once and then they never looked at it again. And then, oh, lo and behold, we come and check on it and it hasn't been backing anything up for the last 6 months. So I launched another polling question here. Has your business ever experienced an event that required a major recovery from backup? So that'd be something fire, ransomware, other hardware failure on the servers, that type of thing. So, backup and recovery is probably one of the most critical things of any IT security plan. You can't recover a lot of your operations unless you have a backup of your data. And, it's a good thought exercise to, think about the importance. If your data was gone, would your business survive? How much of an impedance to resuming normal operations would it be if you didn't have the data you kind of base your daily operations on? And, like I said, a ton of businesses either don't have backups or think they have backups, but they don't have a viable way of checking them regularly. So, I'll share the results here on the poll, and a ton of people here have experienced some type of disaster, fire, ransomware, hardware failure. I'm going to guess possibly a good chunk of those might be ransomware, just because that's so prevalent. Ransomware has emerged over the past several years as a huge threat for school districts, municipalities, and SMBs, explicitly being targeted because oftentimes IT is underfunded, or they just don't have the resources to do a lot of the preventative measures correctly. So I'll kind of go through the quick common failures in small to medium business backups that we see out there. Tape backups, they're slow, they're prone to error, they're less reliable. A USB hard drive on a server or workstation copying the data. Sometimes that even gets rotated off site occasionally. Those are, again, it's not an automated process, so it often gets missed. And ransomware now is designed to take advantage of USB hard drives. It'll encrypt the computer and it'll encrypt the backup of any device it sees attached. And the same goes for network attached storage. Usually you don't even have the ability to rotate those offsite. So that they're, in some ways not necessarily as good as USB backups, but still I would argue they're just not very good at all. I guess better than nothing, but not the right way. really anything that requires daily manual human interaction that isn't auditable and reviewed on a regular basis. Anything that you need somebody to click a button every day to do, or switch a tape or rotate a thing. People are notoriously bad at doing that. They'll do it for a few months, then they'll stop and get complacent. They'll say, oh, well, nothing bad has happened for years and I keep doing this every day. It won't matter if I forget to do it this week. And that invariably always happens with a not automated maintainable solution. Some moderately better options: traditional file and folder based backup software. So a software agent that resides on your servers or workstations. You tell it what to back up, which folders are important, what schedule to use. It still requires daily review and a regular configuration review to see that it's backing up what it's supposed to be. It only protects the data in those folders. It doesn't protect the configuration of the actual server. And restorers can take a very long time downloading all that data. If you have a significant event, ransomware, where you have to recover the entirety of all your data, depending on how much that is, that can take a very long time to do. And then in our experience, the best option for backup and recovery is a full image-based hybrid backup solution. So it typically takes the form of an appliance. It takes a full backup of servers or workstations. So it's the full data and configuration as they are at the time of the backup. Restores are much faster. The data is usually available locally and requires significantly reduced configuration because you can just restore the server as it was at the point of the last backup. And the best solutions allow you to turn on your servers in the cloud. It's still going to require daily review and regular configuration reviews. I'll throw another poll up there to see if people actually are familiar with the type of backup systems that they have. And while we're waiting for that, I'll move into a quick little video I made of kind of some of the flexibility you have if you use a full image-based solution, showing you how quickly you can recover a server, after a failure. So this is just kind of a demo I recorded a couple years ago. So I took a backup of this server. Let's just see how long it would take me to turn it on in the cloud, in the event of a failure, where the client said, "Hey, Dave, we've had a major issue. We need to start the server in the cloud to start getting people access to their data." And I've cut out a little bit of the dead time and the downtime and sped some of the video up here so we didn't have to sit for 3.5 minutes to watch this thing chug away. But the point of the video is to illustrate that within about 3.5 minutes of deciding we need to turn on the backup server, we've got the backup server booting and running in the cloud. You could never do that with a traditional backup system and trying to recover. So I'll go ahead and end polling and share the results here. So it's fantastic. We got 8 companies out there that are using a full image-based backup software. That's awesome. You should feel very good about that. That's kind of the best solution that you can have out there. If I see a few people out there with USB hard drives and thumb drives, definitely reconsider those options. At the very least, sit down and look at it and test it, make sure it's actually doing what you think it's doing. Because almost every time I've seen one of those in place, we look at it and it's just like, oh, yep, the backups haven't run for the last 6 months. It's just one of those things that's kind of super prone to error, configuration errors. So password management, new NIST password guidance. Password policy should not require regular changes. The common thought for years and years and years was change your password every 30 to 60 days. Everybody in the world hates doing that because it's super annoying. And now you're just like, all right, I got to come up with a new password every month and a half. It ends up being more trouble than it's worth. People write them down. People make bad passwords. So now the guidance is don't make people change it unless there's evidence of compromise. At an absolute minimum 8 characters, we recommend 12 or more. You should set an account lockout threshold, and don't reuse passwords across various websites. That's a super important one. Jeff mentioned before, but that kind of leads into the next question. Don't use the same passwords everywhere. Don't use simple passwords. Don't use passwords that contain information about yourself. Don't write down passwords. Don't share your passwords. Think about it. How many passwords do you have? How can you possibly do all this good security stuff that Jeff and Dave told you to do? I thought, like, I looked through, my list of sites that I have an account on. I have 200 something passwords. It's just impossible to do on your own. That's why we recommend a password manager. Many are free for personal use. They synchronize across different browsers and mobile devices. The passwords are encrypted before they leave your computer. And now you just remember that one password for the password manager, and you use the password manager to create a variety of passwords for all the different sites that you go to. So they're always random, they're always different, and you don't have to think about them. So now if somebody compromises your weird cooking recipe website forum and gets your username and password for that, they can retry it everywhere else, and it doesn't matter because you have not reused that password at any other site that you use. And password managers are often also quite good at storing other important information, recovery account questions, account numbers, and business versions are great to help teams share passwords securely. And they can fill common passwords that multiple people need and actually prevent staff from seeing passwords. So when you have turnover, now we don't have to worry about changing the passwords for the 13 financial sites that the temp accountant knew when they worked for us for 6 months last year. Oh, they never saw the passwords. They just used it via password manager.
One thing to add to that too is, sorry, Dave, is that most password managers do this, but two-factor authentication is usually mandatory. But obviously, making sure you have that on your password manager is extremely big because it's the keys to the castle.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, that's another place. If you're going to use a password manager, two-factor authentication, please. So I managed to get through quickly to get us right to 2 o'clock. So I'll just touch on the conclusion. If you do one thing today, go back, turn on multi-factor on all your public-facing accounts. Do that. If it's the only takeaway you got from today, do that thing. Cybersecurity awareness programs for employees, they're a necessity nowadays, and they're not that expensive. It's a great way to get a tangible increase in cybersecurity and protect your business. There's some simple and cost-effective technical additions out there that you can make to your network. They're not out of reach of any business, regardless of size. A decent business grade firewall with some filtering in place and DNS security filtering. There are a lot of ways to back up your data, only a couple good ways. So it's definitely something that should be on your radar, is needing to be addressed, because if you don't have a good backup and you get ransomware, the only way you're recovering is by paying the ransom. And good luck with that. You don't have a guarantee that you're actually going to get that data back. And make 2021 the year that you finally start managing your passwords correctly. Get a password manager and use that tool to make your life easier, make yourself more secure. And then finally, protect your email accounts with multi-factor authentication. Protect any other accounts with multi-factor authentication that support it. So now that we're kind of at the end here, I'll throw up our contact information so that you can, if you have any additional questions, you want a copy of the PowerPoint, you can reach out to Jeff or I. We got a couple of Q&As here. So we got one from Terry. Can the backup be hacked if it is constantly plugged into the computer? So yes, that's one of the reasons we don't recommend network attached storage or USB drives, because ransomware authors are getting a lot better at, they grow and get better and refine their skills and the programs they use over time, just like legitimate businesses do. So now they've designed ransomware to say, all right, I'm encrypting all the valuable data on the computer. Let me just take a look, see if there's any USB drives attached. Oh, yep, there's a USB drive attached. Let me encrypt everything there. Let me look, see what network drives are attached. Okay, I see a couple of network drives. Let me encrypt all that stuff too. So that you go to restore from your USB drive and you click the restore button in your backup program, and all of a sudden, no, hey, it won't work because the backup is encrypted too. So yep, those USB drives and network drives, that's a common issue. Question from Aaron Markovich. It's maybe a strange question. Who should be in charge of passwords for an organization? Who should have full access to them? It's another good question too. If you're using a password manager, something like, we use LastPass internally, that's kind of the product we recommend. It has a lot of good sharing features, and you can kind of designate it, different areas and different permissions, almost like you would a network file share structure. So you can create like a departmental folder that's, the accounting department has all the passwords for the financial websites and things like that. And then you only share it with those people, and maybe you hide the passwords from everybody except the senior level accounting staff. And you could kind of replicate that structure throughout the other departments in your organization. Ultimately somebody's going to have the keys to the kingdom to the password manager. So that would be somebody in management, that type of thing, that's kind of that trusted person that's been at the business or a part owner of the business or something like that. That's kind of a trusted role to put people in. Another question here. My video surveillance is on a separate IP address modem from Cox Cable, so it's not part of the company network. Is that safe? Yeah, so it's definitely safer in the sense that even if that DVR got totally compromised and an attacker set up shop there and had remote access to it and could start launching attacks from it, they wouldn't be able to get to your internal network. They'd be able to see the cameras potentially, which may give them other intelligence about your business operations and that type of thing. The other thing that it could be used to do, so a lot of times when these DVRs are compromised, they become part of larger botnets. So they start getting used to launch attacks out on the internet. So you hear like denial of service attacks, where a lot of traffic gets generated to one specific location or website in order to take it down. If your DVR got compromised, it could be used for something like that, even if it weren't, say, a direct threat to your organization. Aside from having those video streams possibly visible to an outside party. Jeff, is there anything else you can think of that you might want to add to that?
Yeah, the one thing I would add is a lot of times people think it is segregated, that they have their connection segregated, but make sure that they cannot access your company network from the modem for Cox Cable. A lot of times we've seen the clients where they think it's segregated and they've been told it's segregated, but then we've gone on the network and we're able to ping the company network from the network that's supposedly segregated. So definitely just verifying, that they are segregated. They're on different VLANs at the very least, but that it's totally different connections, not plugged into the same switch, both physically and virtually separated would be the main thing. And again, Dave hit it right on the head with the surveillance. If they gain access to the cameras, they can definitely do certain amount of things with that, gain certain knowledge about maybe if there's pin pads at the company, things like that to get in physically. But it's definitely safer than obviously having it on the same network as the company, as long as it is segregated properly, or else it's basically like having it on the same network.
Yep. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. And probably the best way to do that is have something like a security assessment from a third party vendor, something like that, and they can validate that type of thing for you. And then last question in the queue is, do you recommend a password manager? Yeah, I personally recommend LastPass. I mentioned it earlier. That's what we use internally. That helps us manage and share our passwords securely among our team. Share the actual passwords with the staff that need to know the password, and for other passwords where maybe they just need access to the site, but it's not important for them to actually see what the password is. It gives you all that type of functionality, and it's super affordable. I think their lowest level of kind of the Teams version, where you can have up to 50 users, is something like $4 a user a month. But there's other ones out there too. I think one password or KeyPass or something. There's a few ones, but LastPass has worked really well for us.
KeyPass, yeah.
Yeah, we've been using it for I want to say 5, 6, 7 years now.
And Dave, did you talk about the integration with personal for LastPass? You might have already, how you can integrate your personal LastPass account.
I did. Touch on that. That's definitely a useful feature of that.
Yeah. So one of the main reasons I love LastPass, and other ones do this as well, I'm not just preaching LastPass because there's hundreds out there, but it has the ability so that you can have a personal LastPass account and then your business LastPass account. So if you're using the same web browser, if you use Google Chrome for everything, no matter the device, as long as you have LastPass installed, you can go to a personal site and it'll work. And then you can go to your business site and it'll pull the credentials from that one and keep them completely segregated, so that when, if you leave the company, it'll let you take away all your personal passwords with you, and then the business passwords stay with the company. So it works both ways for personal and business wise.
Awesome. So I see we got to the end of our questions. Again, thank you everybody for coming and listening to us. Jeff and I, we love talking about tech with people. and helping small businesses kind of figure out how to do this stuff without necessarily having to understand it, and making it less scary and less intimidating. So we want to make it accessible. If you do have any questions, you could feel free to reach us at the contact information we've got up on the screen. And we'd certainly love to talk to you and love to help you out.
Absolutely. Thank you.